Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3 is here!
Okay.
Since my reviews of Season 2 over 1 year ago, I've remained determined not to watch or read a single thing about this third season, which, need I remind you, was one of the most painful cliffhangers I've ever experienced. However, my patience has paid off, because everything that follows from now will be a surprise. It's like Christmas, only instead of my loving family by my side, I've got 4 hours of peak waiting for me. And I am done waiting. I'm done being patient, and I am done writing this intro. Start rolling that AMV because it's time to dive into the Culling Games, baby! Now, seeing as it's been a full calendar year since I last looked at this story, I think it's only fair that I check out a quick recap video to make sure, I remember all the little details. Alright, all I need is to find the right video and, 40 minutes. I don't remember Season 2 being that complicated. Oh my god! What do you mean Nanami's dead now? Who the fuck is Noritoshi Kam? Why is Nobara dead? Gedo's brain has better teeth than I do. Well, now that those pesky repressed memories have been unleashed, it's finally time for Season 3. Episode 1, and holy fucking shit, it's a banger. In fact, it's so incredible, I'm worried that I'm not going to find the right words to explain why it is this way. So, while I think about that, let me tell you about Opera GX. There are a whole bunch of customizable features in this browser, but if you hop into their GX mods library, you can transform your entire browser in just one click. Now obviously I went with a Jujutsu Kaisen theme, immediately repping Yuji, but there were a whole bunch of other characters available too. I don't even think I've ever seen sound effects customization in a browser before, but this theme makes the eye-catch noises play when you open and close tabs. It plays cam music from the show while you're idling and even has typing sounds. Now of course, if it ever gets too much, you can toggle them off, but there is a little part of me that kind of loves the little sounds when I hover over stuff. And if that's not enough, there's a whole bunch of other mods to explore too. And if you find one you mostly like, but maybe the background isn't doing it for you, there's an absolute mountain of animated wallpapers available independently. And for those of you about to binge Season 3 like I am, the video pop-out feature is honestly the best. I used it to have the window float over my script while I was working on this video, but I'm sure many of you out there will find it handy if you're trying not to die of boredom while studying too. They've also got crazy awesome messenger integration right in the sidebar, so there's no need to juggle windows around if you're trying to sync watch with your friends. Now, if you're still on some inferior browser or whatever, switching over is extremely simple too. In just a few clicks, all of your bookmarks, history, and even your cookies are brought across seamlessly. So if you're looking to sink your teeth into Opera GX, the link is in the description down below, and speaking of syncs, let's get started. Nope, I'm serious. The weight of Sukuna's slaughter and what he managed to do with Yuji's own hands hangs over the entire introduction like a silent, dark specter, with the shot of Yuji attempting to wash the blood off of his hands, leveraging the same directorial trick that made the Rain's transition into the clapping for Geto during hidden inventory so damn effective. This metaphor for his troubled conscience mixing beautifully into the chaotic cacophony of the curse he's presently fighting is chef's kiss. Which, by the fucking way, one of the only things I was worried about before jumping into this new season was whether or not these new episodes would capture the same magic and tones set by the Shibuya Incident. It's no secret Season 1 was, kinda average, so you can imagine how my face looked within moments of this first episode kicking off. From the immediate high stakes, the dark atmosphere, and the new OP that has no business going this fucking hard following "You Are My Special," but fuck that shit, because honestly, this is like the Shibuya Incident 2. It's just as dark, tense, and every single scene is just brimming with subtext, some of the most disgustingly slick animation I've seen in years, and I think my heart just skipped a beat. Am I seeing that right? Already we're getting Yuta versus Yuji? No foreplay? At least tickle my balls first, Gege. This is the perfect opening scene. No dialogue, just raw, unfiltered cinema.
So, is Mai dead?
Oh, well, that was certainly a come down.
I will
But hey, at least Maki's alive. Who the fuck is this cunt?
Whoa!
I guess now it's time for me to talk about Mr. Aura Farm himself, Naoya Zenin. I didn't love his first scene, but before you kill me, hear me out. Through the eyes of Naoya, we catch back up with Maki, Mai, and learn a ton of fascinating stuff, but it comes at the cost of Naoya's only chance to make a strong first impression. The introduction of this inheritance subplot is a worthy new motivation to throw into the mix, while also serving as a natural way to dispense updates as to the condition and whereabouts of all Zenin clan characters we have invested in. But from start to finish, any dialogue serving to otherwise introduce or characterize Naoya Zenin feels intentionally half-baked to create room for the aforementioned exposition concerning Maki and Megumi, which bothers me because this show can and already has done so much better than that. The implications for the narrative here are great, but Naoya isn't presented as interesting so much as he is nakedly arrogant and cruel, almost two-dimensionally so, which would be fine, but there's nothing he's offering that we haven't seen before from the Zenin clan. There's no nuance here. The scene itself is strong as it raises the tension of the entire story substantially, but all of that suspense flows from Megumi's indirect involvement through his inheritance. The fact that Naoya is the first point of contact feels almost secondary. If anything, the whole scene does more to characterize Naoya's late father than it does him. I mean, that dude knew exactly what he was doing with that will, and it is hilarious. But at any rate, it serves as a great means of getting Naoya into the thick of things, if nothing else. So yeah, it's just one scene, so I'm willing to give it a pass. For now, dun dun dun!
It's kind of cringe.
The intro Yuji receives in this season is very Nanami's death coded in that it's a substantial deviation from Gege's manga, which is good. In the manga, we get right into the action and story without any room to really sit with the aftermath of the Shibuya Incident like we do here. While I love my plucky protagonists as much as the next guy, there's tremendous value in creating space to just sit and feel what these characters are feeling because it adds weight. It creates a powerful atmosphere and offers everything that's happened and has yet to come far more texture to play with. Of course he wants to isolate himself after what happened. Wouldn't you? I'm always isolated and nothing like that ever happened to me. Also, Choso is a G. There wasn't a natural place to mention that amidst all the, misery. So here it is. Have a doggy treat. Wait, there it is! There's the meme! Honestly, that one meme did more for Naoya's character than his entire introductory scene did. I'm on board, I've bought the t-shirt, slap me like that Naoya, slap me baby! But in all seriousness, this is a great scene for Naoya. Everything from how observant he is to the dehumanizing language he levies towards Choso without missing a beat. It all serves to sculpt this incredibly smarmy character, and it only gets better with each passing second. Fuck, right? Yeah, I didn't know Yuta had aura like that either. Like, I saw the movie and he definitely evolved over its runtime, but shit man, not like this. Dude went from zero to hero to fucking psycho. The conversation, negotiation between Naoya and Yuta is also incredibly brilliant, mostly because I get lost in Naoya's eyes, but also because the thought of even looking into Yuta's makes me physically ill, which must have also thrown me off because right before this fight kicks back into gear, I went ahead and wrote predictions for how I thought it was going to go, and I was wrong. Did he just kill Yuji? I didn't see that one coming, at all. I predicted something far less interesting, in fact. With how powerful Naoya had demonstrated himself to be without so much as trying, and given Yuta was far more than Yuji himself could handle alone, the fact that Choso had insisted Yuji run for his own safety while he deals with Naoya had me entirely convinced that this would be another moment where Yuji's own lack of ability to control a given situation would just result in another person he cares about dying. The pieces were all there, and something like that could have worked, but what we got was so much better. Two battles featuring far more mysterious motivations at play, where each opponent serves as a beautifully thematic inversion of the other. And all of this became glaringly obvious once Yuta arrives because he mirrors Yuji in practically every aspect. Even if we remove the parallel the show explicitly draws between them regarding their physical prowess and cursed energy, their journeys also follow the same inverted paths. Yuji chose to fight right away because it gave his life meaning, whereas Yuta ran from his power because he felt it robbed him of agency until he was left with no choice but to engage with it. It is a super cool thematic comparison that's explored, and The best part is, as I sit waiting for Sukuna to erupt from Yuji's chest following Yuta's execution of him, I'm forced to realize something I never saw coming. That Yuji versus Yuta wasn't even the best part of this episode. Oh man, okay, where do we even fucking begin with something as crazy as this? Like, I had become somewhat invested in Choso following season 2, but never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined a fight like this was possible between a character I was lukewarm on and another I had only just met. Now, I'll get to the substance of this battle, but I need to mention the animation for a second because it literally tells the story of who's dominating the fight as the battle progresses. With it commencing very much in Naoya's favor, his animation-based technique literally forces the style of the scene to abandon its model correctness in order to facilitate this far more energetic and loose style, complementing the ferocity of Naoya's attacks. But as you've seen, slowly over the course of this battle, the ebb and flow and control of it moves to Choso's favor by the end, with the entire scene bathing itself in this intense blood-red glow. It's incredibly clever visual direction, but nothing outshines the ideological struggle at the heart of this clash. Just as Yuji and Yuta served as inversions of each other, Naoya's narcissistic outlook on the importance of family runs into direct conflict with Choso's very identity and worldview. And honestly, I'm kind of upset with myself that I didn't clock this clear distinction between them sooner, because all of what makes this battle something special is precisely what sets Jujutsu Kaisen apart from other more traditional and lazy battle shonen. It understands that a fight like this has to have one goal above anything else, and it's not to show incredible action, it's to explore through action the fundamental disagreement in worldview between a man who desperately wishes to be an only child and another who proclaims the virtue of the brothers he has since lost. It's emotional stuff. Like that bit where Choso highlights the possibility to Naoya that his brothers, whether he wants to believe it's true or not, likely walked so he could run. It strikes at something fundamental to his character, something that's so undeniably true in Naoya Zenin's case that it transforms a once competitive clash into a blood-drenched lesson in humility, courtesy of Yuji's older brother. What the fuck? I'm sorry, but this Yuta, you know, the one that was a little sniveling Yuta, the one that Maki picked on Yuta, he has no business having this much fucking aura. I could feel it in my bones that something was going to go wrong and cause Choso to fumble at the last moment, but Psycho Yuta appearing from the shadows like some sort of unstoppable specter was not among the likely outcomes I had bouncing around in my noggin. But with that said, I still loved it. My head was dizzy with questions though, like why did Sukuna not come out? Where's Megumi? Why is this arc called the Culling Games? And in retrospect, all of this managed to distract me from an important clue, one that could have shown me where this sequence was heading. I'm talking about Naoya's internal monologue. Among the characters involved, Yuta's internal thought process, despite being the most powerful and silent, remained concealed from us throughout. Obviously, this lent itself to the atmosphere and suspense that this character was trying to present, but interestingly, this also created the perfect place to plant a misdirection because what we did get to hear was Naoya's internal and honest thoughts, and because of that, the plan he had set up between himself and Yuta gained, at least in my mind, legitimacy. Indirectly, for the purposes of the scene, we are placed in Naoya's shoes, which creates the perfect conditions for two things to happen. One, we genuinely got to learn more about his character, with this loss serving to reposition him within the story as less of a simple powerhouse into more of a deeply misguided and somewhat pathetic minor player. And number two, it allowed us to be convinced that Yuta had been telling the truth all along. Okay, there's so much to process here, Yuta is a double agent who isn't working for Jujutsu High, but rather on behalf of Gojo, who's currently locked up, and that kind of makes Yuta a triple agent? 2.5 agent, I don't know. And the matter of Naoya offering him this opportunity on a silver platter was overwhelmingly convenient, but not in a bad way because it very perfectly ties into the existing motivations for Naoya as a character. Okay, love that for them. But what the fuck was that dream Yuji just had? Like, that's Yuji's dad? Jin? Who is he? What does he do? How can Yuji remember any of this? There are so many subtextual and explicit implications being hinted towards concerning a controversy with Yuji's mother, who we still don't know, And then I see this girl. Is that Yuji's mother? What's with the stitches on her head? What could that possibly mean? Is that Geto's brain guy creating the circumstances necessary for Sukuna's vessel with Yuji? Does that make him kind of indirectly his mother? I need to sit down. I don't know if anyone else felt this way at this point, but are we all in agreement that at the very least, this is a worthy continuation to the events of Shibuya? Like, it's near perfect, with its use of silence and stillness leveraged to a borderline genius extent to enhance the genuine emotion and turmoil struggling to conceal itself beneath the eyes of the children desperately trying to process the unthinkable here. I mean, in the case of this scene, that was most effective for me with the revelation of Nobara's fate. That hit hard. And amid all of the exposition for the Culling Games themselves, that news lingered in my mind, which was what made this a little intrusive.
Anyway, how is your sex life?
I'm really thankful that Choso made it out okay, but honestly, I'm not so sure how I feel about this sudden influx of comedy. Now, I can appreciate that we're trying to come back down from the dramatic, intense highs from moments ago, but these gags, while they are character-focused and, in character, feel as though they're also forcing something to be funny rather than allowing the natural tension to reveal humor itself. The Choso jump scare was one thing, but the next Choso scene where he goes, "Oh my god, he called me brother" humor, it just didn't land or feel right for me, at least not so soon after just hearing Nobara was well and truly dead. Now, I totally understand the necessity for humor in this show, but when every other scene serves to remind us of something truly tragic, I think when it comes to humor in this episode, less was more, and we didn't really get that. Until now. Okay, who's this? Is this Tengen? Why does he look like that? Character designs usually serve to say something about the characters they represent, and Tengen's whole bag seems to be that they are human but slowly drifting apart from that. Vaguely human-shaped, with clear markers that are distinctly non-human, which, suits what they look like right now. Void of color and with a voice that feels oddly detached, she refers to the individuals of interest with monikers that identify who they are, but in a broader context. I mean, child of Zenin, Sukuna's vessel, that kind of stuff. It's accurate, but it makes me feel like she views them less as individuals and more as chess pieces in this really screwed up game of cursed politics and war. It's a really strong character design that takes the lead in what is eventually discovered to be a rather groundbreaking scene in the series, and I say all of this despite feeling as though I could sleep for several days once it ended, which I promise is a compliment. I mean, if we think about it, none of this should really work in the anime format. At its core, this third episode is a massive, complicated bombardment of exposition to help us make sense of the Culling Games rules, what Kenjaku's plans are and who he even is, and how these goals are informed by past events. And what do you mean there was never another star plasma vessel and you're now an abstract concept? Make that make sense. Now, all of this works on manga paper where you can take your time to fully process the information, but that is an absolutely ludicrous amount of spoken dialogue and exposition to cram into a simple 20-minute episode. And yet, here I am saying that somehow they pulled it off. I mean, I left the episode exhausted, admittedly, but through its leveraging of flowcharts and dynamic visuals, I ended up enjoying all of it to a great extent. And how could I not? There are so many fascinating implications here that make what's to come all the more juicy. The idea of merging mankind with Tengen, who herself has become so much less human over time that she is now vulnerable to not Geto's curse manipulation ability. That's wild. The entire episode flows like the most insane backstory I've ever seen, all shedding light on all the motivations and planning not Geto got up to over the last millennia. And the crazy part is, it all makes sense, and most importantly, for this season, refocuses our team of heroes in a way that makes sense and feels good. We have a series of clear goals to shoot for now, all of which surround the impending Culling Games and Gogo's release from the prison realm, and in a way, it transforms all of this into a morbid game of human chess, complete with two pieces we now need to decide between to guard Tengen from harm. That's wild. Also, there's this comic called Takaba tacked on at the very end here. No idea why. It feels weirdly out of place compared to virtually everything else, so I'm guessing he's going to be important later.
I'm saying that you're being sexist.
No, I'm being misogynistic. That is insane. I'm not being sexist.
Now, you might have noticed that up until now, I haven't so much as acknowledged Maki's return from being cooked alive back in Shibuya. And well, this fourth episode is the reason why. This might very well be the best episode of the entire series, and the best part was, I, like pretty much every single Zenin clan scumbag Maki turned into bone broth just now, never saw it coming. This felt like a film, a great one at that, compressed into a single episode with the audacity to make every single part of my face contort with joy and sorrow in equal measure. Now there's merit to the small nuggets of nefarious plotting Naoya is seen to get up to early on, but in all honesty, this episode takes on a different, far less familiar shape once Maki's father and mother take the reins of their respective scenes. This episode is a roller coaster with staggering highs, but this moment of reflection for both Mai and Maki as they await the monsters their father left them for dead to contend with might just be the heart of the entire piece. I had long since identified the inverse relationship between the two sisters and drawn that connection between Maki and Toji in earlier videos too, but what I never considered was the mechanical potential that relationship held within the story's own rules should Gege have chosen to take that opportunity. Twins are treated as a single cursed entity. That is game-changing. And it means that what had always stood between Maki and achieving the highs of Toji was always her sister. And that is tough to reconcile with, particularly as we understand Mai already struggles with her own sense of worth in a world removed from her sister. The resolution that Gege ultimately reaches with this at the confluence of all of the emotional turmoil, though, is beautiful. Using the technique that Mai knew was holding her sister back, she creates a weapon for her sister to carry, a token that can both serve her sister well while also allowing herself, Mai, in spirit, to always be within arm's reach. The symbolism alone here is enough to turn what was left of my resolve into a tearful wreck, but the fact that this is very much a story about abused twins when I myself am a father of twins transformed this episode into something far more powerful and at times something extremely difficult to stomach. And all to the story's credit, might I add. What follows this sacrifice is perhaps the single most cathartic sequence in the entire story. From Kill Bill references to stunning animation to Naoya once again getting his shit pushed in Mortal Kombat finisher style, it all served to create an experience that I've genuinely struggled to express just how it made me feel. There are too many layers of mommy and daddy issues to unpack in the time that I have allotted myself, but what I will say is that this episode is one of the most beautiful and brutal conclusions to a character's arc I've ever seen. With the choice for Maki to spare her mother's life, transitioning to her mother, finishing off Naoya, before proclaiming in her final moments that she really was proud to have given birth to Maki, it's complicated in the most interesting and gray of ways. It's not good, definitely not good, but there's something there. But there is part of me that wish that this episode had been stretched into maybe a two-parter or even heck a feature film, just to give some of its quicker moments a little more time to breathe. Mai in particular had accumulated a hell of a lot of screen time prior to this, and yet her exit, as beautiful and purposeful as it was, arrived and concluded at a pace that didn't quite honor the weight and impact her character had on the series, I think. I mean, the first time we see her, she's lying in a heap waiting to offer her life for her sisters. Now, there is weight and power in that creative choice, and that being our first and only visual of Mai in this episode, but I can't help but ponder what it must have been like for her, Mai, to approach this place on her own prior to Maki's arrival. How terrified and uncomfortable she must have been. I would have liked to at least seen some of that. Now, there seems to be a unique tension brewing beneath the surface of this season, one where that space and silence for a character to breathe is in constant conflict with the desired pacing a show like this demands.
Just make sure you remember this. Even pandas can cry.
What? What do you mean that's all Yaga gets? Well, I guess that issue I had with Mai in the prior episode wasn't an isolated incident or as bad in comparison. However, whether that's a flaw of the production or the manga is another question entirely. But even in the manga, this scene is unceremonious to say the least. Now, I adore the material that's here, but I can't help but feel that it was all just a bit, I don't know, like disconnected from it all. The anime's placement of this scene, I think, is stronger at least, because it does share some space with a sequence Panda at least contributes to some extent later. But once the credits for this one finally rolled, my feeling of satisfaction was entirely the result of everything else, which is honestly kind of a shame. With all that said, I also want to at least be fair when I dissect episodes 5 and 6 of this season. It's not their fault Yaga's death felt unceremonious to the nth degree, so I shouldn't disrespect both of these episodes for something they had no involvement with. I should criticize them, however, because they're mid. Okay, I'm kidding. Mostly. Okay, kidding aside, these two episodes serve as two halves of a single story. That story being Locate Hakkari, a disgraced but powerful 18-year-old student that definitely doesn't look like a 30-something-year-old man on trend, and convince him to join their team for the Culling Games. And while these two episodes certainly have moments of brilliance, I couldn't help but feel as though there was a noticeable shift in atmosphere. And not a great one, it sort of felt like the end of Season 1's tournament. You know, there's that strong focus on the mechanics of the fight itself, but unlike Season 1, the emotional core of those fights is far more muted here. Not all of it is like this, of course, but it is pervasive enough to be noticeable. But what is cool about this two-parter on paper, at least to me, is how each episode takes place during the same time as the other. All the cool shit with Hakkari and Yuji we later find out takes place at exactly the same time as Megumi's bout on the rooftop. It's not super interesting, but it did help create suspense during Megumi's fight in episode 6. Now, of the 3 fights that make up the content of this mission, 2 are, I was gonna say mid, but they're fine, and 1 is pretty dang good. The first of the 2 mid-fights is Yuji versus Panda. Now, as a means of infiltrating the fight club itself, it worked perfectly fine and was too short to annoy me. What it did do is serve as a reminder that Yaga's death had little to no weight or impact on Panda in this episode, which was, you know, kinda lame, but again, not this fight's fault. The second fight is Megumi and Panda versus Kirara, which is structured almost one-to-one with the school tournament fights from the first season. Again, it is perfectly fine, but it's practically all mechanics, explaining them, working them out, using them against her. And after seeing what this arc is capable of achieving by weaving character and battle beats together organically, all of this just felt, you know, kinda crap. Now, I will say that it could have possibly been hurt by its proximity to that Maki episode where it, you know, all just came together so perfectly, so yeah, let's all keep that in mind. And that brings us to the third and final fight of the storyline, Yuji and Hakkari. And funnily enough, of the 3, we actually see the least amount of action from this one. However, what it lacks in spectacle, it more than makes up for in clever framing and tension. The end of episode 5 was sensational in that regard. Clinging to the door Yuji entered, we hang on this shot like a fly on a wall for over 4 straight minutes with 0 cuts, which is such a fucking cool detail. By removing all of these cuts, it forced me to lean in even more and feel each small change in tone and movement, hoping and praying that Hakkari doesn't find out that Yuji is trying to deceive him. And the moment the jig is up, there's an enormous rush of stress and anxiety born from this deliberate but gradual buildup of tension. The swelling of the atmosphere, the intrusive ringing of the phone, the glass being thrown, and finally, the cut that we've all been waiting for, and it all lands both cohesively and brilliantly in this sequence. The fact that this encounter all ends with Yuji essentially concluding not to fight at all was a welcomed one too. It's nice that we're reminded that Yuji isn't entirely mindless and does in fact have some depth to his character. He's contemplating all of these things, with him in his own way demonstrating his own brand of determination and passion to Hakkari and eventually wins him over. Now, funnily enough, it's that emotional element that sits at the core of this clash that I felt was missing from Megumi's earlier. Despite his sister's lingering background motivation for him, the fight felt comparatively shallow for me.
Let's look at this right here. Salty Springs Retail Row. I forgot the name of this. What's the name of this show again? Fortnite. This is the video game Fortnite, right?
Holy shit! Random spawns? This is such a cool way to open all of this. Immediately we, or at least I, have been thrown completely off balance, and it all serves to kick off the gamified nature of this Culling game beyond what the countless rules already have. And yes, I've already committed them to memory, okay? Get off my back. Now, episodes 7 and 8, much like the last pair, serve as a two-parter. Woohoo! But man, oh man, do these two work so much better than the prior did. And without risking sounding too much like a hypocrite, it's the mechanics of this game, not the emotions of the story, funnily enough, that made these opening seconds to the Culling Game so fun and tense for me. Like, the idea of dedicated spawn points that separate Yuji and Megumi is one thing, but the fact that there are spawn campers looking to score easy points not only makes sense within the logic of this game, but it forces me as a viewer to take a more active approach to start thinking about the story with game logic alongside my story brain. Which reminds me, there's lots of following in episode 7. Now naturally, we've got the two randos that Yuji and Megumi rely on to find who they're looking for, but there's also that scene where Kamo guides each person who chooses to leave the culling space to its borders. With that, dropping nuggets of stuff I will no doubt need to pay more attention to, but don't have the brain capacity for right now. It's all just super stressful stuff, but by far the moment that sent shivers down my spine the most arrived in the closing seconds of this 7th episode, when each of their random guides revealed that they are each guiding their respective MCs to a different location. Meaning that the very best case scenario is that one of them is lying. That's crazy! And it's such a cool way to undercut the bombastic promise of something called the Culling Games with genuinely interesting strategy and game theory. Now this shouldn't surprise you, but with Mai leading Yuji to Ikebukuro and Megumi being led to Shinjuku, I quickly turned to my good old friend Google Maps to discover that these two locations were well over an hour apart by foot. So much for them finding one another, I guess. I don't know how large these Culling Game areas are. Maybe it's been said, I don't know, I can't remember. But I wouldn't be surprised if these two locations are diametrically opposed to each other. But apparently none of that matters because this 8th episode is insanely good in the most different of ways. Like, given how the prior episode left off, to say that I was taken off guard when the first half of this one explored the inner workings of a small-time defense lawyer would be an understatement of a lifetime. But as it happens, this disillusioned lawyer is precisely the individual Yuji and Megumi have been searching for. And to tell you the truth, up until now, I had no reason to care about him. But boy does that change! Apart from episode 8 feeling like its own little powerful film, it's kind of genius in how it lays out Hiruguma's character for us. With it all being anchored around the outcome of a trial I knew the answer to, it still managed a stranglehold on my attention perfectly while setting the stage for what ends up becoming the single most important character beat for Yuji in this season.
Higuruma, what are you doing?
That, however, isn't to downplay the success the B-plot serves in this episode either. The fact that we get some introspection into Remy and particularly Mai via a backstory made the lead up to Higuruma's eventual unveiling all the more nail-biting as I constantly felt myself going back and forth with who was actually telling the truth and who was lying. Now I had my suspicions, but everything was kept just vague enough to make the sudden arrival of the Tokyo Metro Theater all the more suspenseful. Now, through unlocking his technique in a moment of extreme distress and disillusionment, Higuruma basically breaks down in the same way Yuji did following Sukuna's rampage. He's got this deadly sentencing technique and uses it to great effect to rack up tons of points for himself in the game, but as we soon discover, he's empty. Like, it's a sick joke. He's practically got the perfect courtroom through his technique, and yet he feels empty all the same because ultimately it's a system he doesn't believe in anymore. I mean, that's fucking great writing and moreover positions him as the perfect foil for Yuji at this point in his journey.
You stand accused of mass murder in Shibuya on the night of Halloween, October 31st, 2018.
Yeah, I killed all of them. I'm not going to deny it.
I love this so damn much. Now, despite the similarities and disillusioned perspectives here, both Yuji and Higuruma serve to inspire the other in ways few others might. For Higuruma, someone who watched the justice system fail before his eyes, Yuji appears as a shining example of the precise moral conscience he had convinced himself never truly existed. Whereas Yuji, through Higuruma's technique, was forced to confront the nuance of the most traumatic day of his entire life, through the eyes of someone who now genuinely understood what happened. How perfect is that? Higuruma is fundamentally changed as a result of, to the point that Yuji's eventual admission of murder serves as a means of connection rather than hostility. I mean, this whole sequence is honestly a masterpiece. It's everything I adore about Battle Shonen storytelling, all wrapped up in a visually stunning package, which finally brings me to episode 10. No, I'm not talking about that yet. There we go. Okay, am I the only one that thought the way episode 10 refocused and in some ways reinterpreted our understanding of the Culling Game was a little devious? Like, I don't know about you guys, but as Reggie was explaining his thought process while looking like he just lost a bet, I began to wonder if Megumi and Yuji's understanding of the game itself could make the rules they ultimately want to implement backfire somehow. This, of course, is an awful thing to put in my head the very moment Yuji was set to introduce a new rule, but I'm hoping I'm overthinking this. But what can I say? This show stresses me out. I've glazed the visuals of this show to death in this video already, but something that needs praise here too is the choreography and how the artists and writers use that to communicate who these characters are wherever they could. Like within moments of the fight beginning, the actions taken by each participant tells us something about their motivations and personalities. Megumi is thoughtful and puts up a strong front, but Reggie clocks something important here. Megumi sent his Shikigami not to attack, but to protect one of his allies from dying. Now immediately this raises the already elevated stakes from simply being outnumbered into a self-imposed handicap for Megumi. And by realizing this, paints Reggie as a genuinely observant and dangerous individual even without the support of his allies. And need I remind you, we don't even know what his technique is right now. Everything about this early flurry is so chaotic in ways that I can't even hope to describe. The close quarters choreography of Megumi Shikigami to create leverage in a pinch or distance at the drop of an elephant and protection for the points he desperately wants to... Oh, never mind. That dude's... Yeah, he's super dead. Okay, so instead of trying to explain the insanity that is this character's introduction, I've instead decided to read out to you verbatim the notes I took upon his arrival on my screen. Who the fuck is that guy that took an explosion to the face? Like the way this shot lingers on this dude's gushing head as the other characters try to hide how embarrassed they are for him is hilarious. Like it's just such an awkward and oddly still scene, but still brimming somehow with wonderfully subtle character animation. All the while the sound effect of the blood gushing from his head hangs over the entire scene as this piece of ambient but awkwardly censored noise. It is so good, and that's when it hit me. This is the comedian from... Oh god, why is this censor over his dick moving? Now, despite seeing more of this character than any other in this series, for better or worse, I'm left with countless questions. Like, why did he suddenly show up? Why is he dressed like that? Why has he sided with the only character with a weapon and blood on his face? What the hell is his curse technique even doing here? And did he just stick his fingers up that guy's butt?
Roughly 1 in 8 men would be diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Relax your tight end.
So, Reggie's curse technique ended up being way more fun than I thought it was going to be. The concept of being able to summon items on a receipt is wild enough on its own, but the added detail that he can absorb the implied benefit of a paid vacation for instant stamina rejuvenation, I mean, come on, that's fucking cool. But it's the way all of this comes together through the action itself that made it so. Creating footholds, crash mats, means of transport, means of attack, means of defense, and God knows what else, all in an instant is so fun to watch, but it also created opportunities for Megumi at the same time to do cool shit. Like, dude, in a split second, Megumi pulls his sword from the shadow of a falling potted plant. Like, come on! The way Gege has scaled up the complexity of these techniques has brought tears of joy to my eyes. Like, Reggie drives a moped to catch up with Megumi. I don't even care who you are here. That's funny. Which brings me to the gymnasium scene, and oh boy, is this good. I loved the way the audience's perspective shifted as soon as Megumi chose to flee after discovering the nature of Reggie's technique. We had been following Megumi's POV the entire time, and Reggie has been the question mark, but now we're placed in Reggie's shoes. And apart from creating the necessity for Moped Gate, it's a good rule of thumb in stories like this to keep the audience on the back foot during action sequences. If we knew what was going to happen all the time, it would get boring, and sticking to one POV can be tiresome. We now know what Reggie's deal is, so it's time to wait in anticipation for what Megumi has in store. And boy, did this guy not disappoint.
Domain expansion.
Okay, maybe it did a little bit. Look, over my time on YouTube, I've been consistent on two things above all else. My hatred of poorly used narrators and Dragon Ball GT. And I don't see any Dragon Ball GT here, so that must mean I got a bone to pick with this damn narrator. And you'd be right. Well, okay, sort of. I mean, I've glazed this season enough to earn at least one critique, right? So the idea behind the domain clash itself is fantastic. But my problem is that this is a visual medium, and those critical opening moments feature wall-to-wall narration doing all the heavy lifting. Earlier in the season, the Tengen exposition dump earned its length because it leaned on strong visual aids, and that stayed true for most of this season, except here. This is supposed to be compelling action, and even though the narration name drops past fights with Gojo, Jogo, and Hanami, who are perfect examples for visual explanations, they just never come. So instead, I'm just told about the complexity rather than experiencing it. So yeah, okay, that's it. That's my criticism I have. Now it's time to get back to the freaking out over how awesome this is, because good God. Now I don't know if it's the battles writing or just that these two have incredible chemistry, but this is a masterclass in shifting the upper hand, so to speak. Megumi turns his domain's weakness into the perfect counter, and yet Reggie responds with observational genius. It's like two chess grandmasters going at it, and, well, you know, I think I'm starting to root for Reggie. Is that weird? I feel that that's weird. Whatever the case, what's so genius about this fight is that it has me consistently flipping positions. Megumi and Reggie consistently flip back and forth as to who has the upper hand, and with it goes my allegiance. And then, my boy Reggie stands tall and takes the upper hand yet again! Ooh, that's an elephant! OP time! Okay, I nearly cried with joy here. The solution that Reggie comes to is just, oh, it's so cleanly within the bounds of his technique, and Gege gave me all the room to figure it out alongside the character, but I never did, because Reggie's that fucking dude, right? But despite all my Team Reggie chants, Mr. Megumi wins by leveraging neither his domain nor his curse technique, but the environment the domain sits itself on top of, the gymnasium's pool. The slow walk from either side into that frantic hand-to-hand was one of the best animated sequences of the entire season, and then... Secret fucking demon dog! Megumi, I bow to you. Please, take this flower. I want to kiss you. Okay, I'm sorry. But dialing everything back, the only real downside outside of that narration is that someone had to lose here. Reggie offering Megumi his remaining points on the way out was the classy send-off he deserved. I will miss you, my sweet, naked receipt prince. You have earned your place in the JJK pantheon of goats. I probably shouldn't say that because, you know, he's probably like a mass murderer. Anyway. From the moment that this fight started in the apartment complex onwards, this has been a 10 out of 10 on almost every axis. Choreography, character work, animation, subtextual weight. The more I sit with it, the more I think that it might maybe just edge out Maki versus the Zenin clan as the high point of the season for me. Maki's massacre was incredible, but the opponents had nothing that came close to stopping her. But Reggie, my boy, gave Megumi a headache and a half, and the results were more than just an exciting back and forth. Since this guy showed up, I have been trying to figure this technique out. And when I saw him react to that hot tea and not the incoming explosion for some reason, a theory hit me. He's a failing comedian, right? What keeps someone like that from coming back every night? Thick skin, that's what. So what if his exterior is invincible and the hot tea was a hinting that his insides were still vulnerable? That would have been a cool theory, had it not been immediately disproved 14 seconds later. But I will find some solace in the fact that it was comedian gimmick related. Whatever he finds funny, he can make real. Come on, partial credit for that, right? This right here was an interesting way to close out the Tokyo colony for me. Remy spent most of her screen time in service of someone else, so it was at least good to see how she became who she was, how she learned to see men as wolves. The visuals here are all fantastic. Megumi's demon dog is fully poised to attack when Sumiki's voice echoes in his mind telling him to stop. To Remy, Megumi is a wolf, but the person this wolf derives all of his strength from is a woman herself, and her virtue becomes his salvation in the end. Not the worst bit of poetry to cap things off with, in my opinion. Which brings us finally to episode 12. Okay, no, stop. Okay, I waited a full year for new Jujutsu Kaisen, and you're telling me I've got to wait another year for the rest? Part of me wants to stop here just so I can always have one in reserve. What do you guys think?
Do it.
Okay, fine, I'll watch it.
He blossomed as a special grade sorcerer, He is a modern sorcerer rivaling the abilities of even Satoru Gojo.
I'm gonna have to concede before we jump in that this entire episode felt like I was playing an extreme game of catch-up. And yet, in spite of the wild whiplash of suddenly appearing in a brand new location at the very last minute, the episode worked. And I believe we can thank its thoughtful structure for that. Before we even lock eyes with Yuta, who genuinely surprised me by being here first off, Sendai Colony is stuck in a complete deadlock born from these entities with irreconcilable techniques and goals. Our arrival, therefore, into the colony coincides with the first major upset, courtesy of Yuta. From here, the question then becomes, is Yuta savvy enough to come out on top against these, well, gods of sorcery? The bog fight itself stands out in that regard because it places front and center the central goal of the episode as well as Yuta's self-imposed limitations, hiding his reverse curse technique while simultaneously removing Rika from the equation to protect civilians. All of this then served to create the perfect conditions for one of the wildest things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, you touched my tongue.
For a brief moment, my soul left my body and I was looking down at myself, a grown man sitting in the dark, watching a teenage samurai explode kissing a giant cockroach man. Would it make my English teacher cry himself to sleep? Probably. But do I have the best job in the world? You bet your buggy butts I do.
Reverse curse technique.
Once the three-way that defines this episode finally begins, each combatant arrives with a completely different relationship to this battle. Uro is driven by a desperation, determined to reconcile an ancient grievance, while Ryu is very much the opposite. Despite fighting many worthy opponents all throughout his existence and meeting a good woman, his first life left him largely unfulfilled. Starved for dessert, as he would describe it, for hundreds of years until finally a room revealed itself worth being in. This is why the three-way domain expansion and its fallout, I think, serves as the episode's peak. Even if we ignore the stupidly impressive visuals, which I'm really struggling to, with the bug breaking everything down, the domain crash represents the most powerful technique being reached for all at once, like in a murder mystery and everyone just lunges for the gun, ultimately resulting in its neutralization. All that's left then are three people at the limits of their respective abilities.
Don't move.
This was the moment I lost my absolute fucking shit with excitement. Yuta's curse technique is to copy? What? At this point, all bets are off. This kid is way too fucking overpowered. The subsequent eliminations following the domain breakdown are unceremonious and messy, which help to sell the level of drama and desperation at play. Ryu versus Yuta is the final struggle of this season's finale, and fittingly, it's the emotional core too. What I liked most about it was how different it felt. Up until now, desperation to gain the upper hand had been the order of the day, with each surprise success from Yuta pushing him closer and closer to his breaking point. Watching this kid breathe heavily genuinely offered more for the suspense of this episode than virtually every other creative choice. And with the stakes suddenly so high and Yuta in uncharted territory, the frantic energy that once defined this episode suddenly gave way to a wonderfully strong mutual respect between Yuta and Ryu, with Yuta himself volunteering to give Ryu everything he had said he wanted. And then the insert song plays. Well, who needs all that power when you've got the natural ability to cheat all the curse techniques like Yuta does? Seriously though, how sweet was that implementation of Uro's technique at the last second here? Through this, Yuta gives Ryu the fight he had spent 400 years waiting for. In his own words,
I'm full now.
Whew, okay. Going into season 3, I was, let's call it reserved. Jujutsu Kaisen's second season set a bar that felt almost punitive for whatever might come afterwards. It was filled with catastrophe, irreversible losses, and it was all staged in the most enthralling manner imaginable. Lesser shows would have tried to ride that wave, perhaps even tried to push things even more catastrophically to an almost Flanderized extent. But that's not what happened here. Season 3 is measured and quiet in register, but importantly, not in ambition. Where the Shibuya Incident collapsed the world around our heroes, the Culling Games forced those same heroes to answer the question, what do people become once the world has already collapsed? Much the same way an explosion is thrilling and eye-catching, the fallout, if it is to be believable, can't be as bombastic. And therefore, each episode of this season offers a different exploration for different characters on that very central question. What does happen next once you pick up the ashes in a collapsed society? Does Season 3 surpass its predecessor? I don't think anyone could really say that it does, but I think it's important to point out that it never tried to. And if it had, it would have been almost certainly worse off for it. Operating with only one half of the episodes allotted to Season 2, what this Season 3 did demonstrate was ultimately what made Jujutsu Kaisen an international success. Range, tragedy, appetite, collapse, and eventually a full stomach. Season 3, in my opinion, was more than satisfying. I cannot wait though for Season 4 next year. But until then, I've been Totally Not Mark, and thank you all so very much for watching.